Hello and welcome to the show. I'm here on GTA 5 testing out some more of the latest DLC cars, of course, by driving them down Mt Chiliad. Our first vehicle, the Verlierer, I think is how it's pronounced, is the best you're going to get from me. Anyway, it's a crazy TVR looking thing, so of course it has to come in bright purple. It spits much of the fire, and a vehicle that is of course very much not suited for going off-roading. However, the sports and the supercars do tend to still go very, very quickly down this course, so I was interested to see how it would fare. Interesting problems with this car. It did not like the high-speed bumps at all. This first run we get, I get a huge jump that I wasn't expecting, try and control it, can't get it stopped, and then we get even bigger airtime further down, and then gets completely and utterly wedged on the rocks. Yeah, you know, while these kind of vehicles, you know, they shouldn't be able to survive this course, but they do tend to do very well. This part of the circuit, it just couldn't do. It couldn't do at the normal speeds and the normal aggression that you would take with, well, most of the vehicles, in all honesty, going down here. You'd hit that bump and it would launch the car about all over the place. I'm wondering if this is quite a light car. It's certainly an agile car. I'm wondering if perhaps it being a relatively small, very light car, perhaps that was what was upsetting it when you hit that jump, or you hit the bumps around there so hard. Also, it's a rear-wheel drive car. You can certainly tell, especially with it having problems over the bumps. It was very easy for the rear end to get kind of just thrown up into the air ever so slightly. Then when it lands, you'd spin the wheels and then promptly spin the car. So you had to be quite aware of that one when dealing with the bumps. Got it on two wheels, trying to come down the side road. Never a good thing. Never a good thing at those sort of speeds, trying to turn it and get the car up onto two wheels. Such a narrow and fast part of the track down there. If you're a few millimeters in the wrong place, you're going to have, well, as you saw, really rather large accident. The brakes on this car were really quite impressive, as was the handling. You could take good corner speed with this vehicle. Just had to be aware of those bumps. We've had a couple of cars have issues. Generally, the oversteery vehicles can have some issues through there. You just sort of hit the bump as you're trying to maintain your speed, and as that launches the back of the car, yeah, it's not going to have any grip. And sure enough, it went round in a circle. This has got to be the tamest accident I've ever had at this part of the track. Took too much speed, bounced up on the landing, and then the bush manages to bring us to a halt before we ever do any damage to the car, which is always quite nice when the bushes actually kind of work to help you. Again, I was still having difficulties getting it flat out down that section. I can't think of any car that's quite had as many problems being flat out through that opening or down that sort of first little bit of a straight. It took a little while to get a clean run from this vehicle. It was mainly about trying to deal with the bumps as well as possible. Down this part here, we didn't have any too many problems. Just have to be careful across that crest. Here has been flat out in every vehicle, that bump, but in this car here, I think I did do it on this run. You had to get everything absolutely perfectly right though, if you were going to get away with it. Now after that initial bump, this part here of the course is lovely in this car. It's a fantastic vehicle to drive, lots of grip, great turning, great brakes. It's really very nice to drive around here, but then we're starting to get back into the bumpy sections. You've got to start now worrying what's the back end going to do. Can you maintain the speed through this next corner? We do get a big airtime across the bump, but this time out we don't get a big oversteer moment. Again, this change of direction here, you've got to try and make sure that the back end doesn't start stepping out on you. As soon as you start sliding, it might not be immediately that you crash, but the chances are that slide's going to put you out of place somewhere further down the line, and then you might have a bit of an off. We get the landing sorted a little bit better, still got some airtime and still manages to put the car slightly twisted coming down the side road, but it was enough to get it all under control. Then we come to these really big scary bumps around the second to last corner. I was a little bit cautious around that turn just to make sure, again, that we didn't have any big oversteering moments, and it is a big flight across the line and a slight bump into a tree, but there we go for the car. I really thoroughly enjoy driving this car. It's a lovely vehicle to drive on tarmac. On the dirt though, any bumps cause it a little bit too many issues, really, whereas a lot of the other sports cars don't have the same problems going down Chiliad other than it started to rain. I think it's a fantastic looking car, and certainly for tarmac driving, a lovely vehicle, but Chiliad, no. Lots of other sports cars deal with the bumps far better than it, but it is quite quick. Up next, the Cognoscenti. Again, that's the best I'm going to pronounce this car's name. I've gone for the 55 version of this, the slightly smaller one. I actually prefer the front bumper. They're very slightly different front bumpers between the two cars. I prefer the front bumper of this one. Yeah, I thought I would have a go with the 55. Didn't really know what to expect from this car, in all honesty. Some of these saloons can actually be pretty damn quick down here, but this one here being a larger car, okay, it's not gonna have the supercars power or sports cars power and so on. But yeah, I thought it might be okay if it wasn't too large for the course. The thing that immediately caught me out, having gone from a sports car with very, very good brakes to this that doesn't quite have as good a brakes, ran very wide, and then trying to make up a bit of time, very nearly rolled the car around the next corner. The brakes were the big kind of difference between the vehicles that I was struggling with on the first few runs. This just doesn't get stopped as quickly as as you could imagine. That's very much fair enough on this car's front. Similar story down here, trying to get away with carrying that little too much speed, and the length of the car doesn't help down that corner there. I kind of got the front end turned around fine, but the back, yeah, couldn't quite get that through the corner. It did though deal with the bumps much better until you turn in a little bit too soon, and then you roll the car. I don't think I've ever rolled a vehicle at that corner, so that was a first for the 55 through there. You tend not to roll cars in that manner. And another, just outbraking myself ever so slightly. There is a decent amount of speed anyway, certainly, in this car. Yeah, not quite as much acceleration as the Verlierer, but it's still pretty good going. Coming down this side road, yeah, got a little carried away with the speed, and it is so narrow. There's such a fine line you take down there if you're going to keep the car on the road. If you just go too far either side, it's going to throw you about, and yeah, sure enough, I ended up off the course. It took a few runs to get the hang of this vehicle. All in all, though, it was a pretty good car to drive down here. We had none of the bump issues that we had with the previous vehicle. We could be flat out down here. There was no problems with the car. It didn't get unsettled at all down that part. A little bit on two wheels, a little bit more than I was expecting, in all honesty. Aside from the opening run where we got a big time on two wheels through that corner, didn't have any massive problems with it wanting to roll over, so I was quite surprised to see it go so far up on two wheels. Also managed very nicely through these tighter sections. Despite being a really rather large car, this one, yeah, it's slightly smaller than the other one. It's still a pretty damn hefty vehicle, though. Yeah, we had no issues getting it turned around these tighter sections. Did get a little bit outbraked myself through that previous corner, but managed to gather it all up. And again, around these twisty sections, and then on these big jumps as well, it dealt with the landings very, very well. We've often had cars previous few weeks having issues on these landings. I mean, this place here is a big landing zone problem, and even getting it slightly skew with. Normally you do that with a car, or that's going to be run over because something's going to go wrong with landing it at that kind of twisted angle. But nope, this car was absolutely fine with dealing with all of that. Around the second to last corner, across the horrible bumps, still no problems for the vehicle around the final turn, and then flat out run towards the line. Almost managed to get it, trying to nail the gap between the trees, the rear of the car, a little bit too long, and got it a little bit sideways across the jump. But yeah, it surprised me actually just how well it dealt with all of the course. The tight twisty sections it was good at, dealt with all of the bumps very, very well, despite the relatively long wheelbase on this car. Unfortunately, it didn't quite deal with the getting turned back to park up at the end. I may have slightly forgotten how long the car was, and got a little bit caught up while trying to do a handbrake turn, and now we're slightly sliding down the hillside. I wasn't quite intending to go down here, but either way there's a path that I can park the car on. Yeah, it was a nice vehicle. It didn't really have any major flaws when driving down Chiliad. And our final car for today, it is the Baller LE long wheelbase version. I thought it would have a go with the long wheelbase one. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I guess it's a slight variation on the Baller. It doesn't look massively different to the normal Baller. Now, these SUVs have tended to go, or can go, certainly, quite quickly down Chiliad, so I was curious to see how this vehicle would do. It certainly has got some decent acceleration, although we get a long way on two wheels on this first run, although that was about the only time it had any massive issues through that first corner bit, so I don't quite know what went on in this run. I did a very, very similar thing with this vehicle. Just outbrake myself a little bit, but it was a quarter or two later. I may have tried to turn in just a fraction too soon and instantly rolled it. That is something that we have seen plenty of SUVs do through that turn. I didn't quite take a wide enough line, and that's what I am tending to do there to avoid cars rolling. I didn't take a wide enough line with this on its first run, and sure enough, ended up on its roof. Similar things with this, as we saw when I got in the Cognoscenti, is that it's just not quite got the brakes, and it has got the acceleration. Both of the cars are very quick accelerating vehicles, certainly relatively speaking, and yeah, you don't quite have the stopping power that you might immediately expect. It also rolls quite nicely when we're going down a hill. It does do a pretty decent job of managing to all get back under control once it's got back onto its wheels and it's been tumbling down the side of a mountain. I'm not quite sure why I was taking that line. May have got slight bumps and been forced out wide. Either way, yeah, that's a peculiar line. And then even more peculiarly, we go for a roll across the first of the big jumps. I'm not sure how I managed to roll that. I've taken that jump at all sorts of wonky angles in all sorts of vehicles. Never had the car leave the ramp on its side and then promptly roll later on. So yeah, that was a little bit of an odd one. Again, carrying too much speed across the jump there. I just couldn't get it stopped for the corner at the bottom of the hill. We're going down to the fast jump, just a millimetre or two too wide. Bounced off the rock face, that put the vehicle up in the air. I was so close to gathering that all back up again, but I think the front wheel just clipped the hillside, and that forced the car out wide, and then we're going to go and play in some trees. And now we're losing pretty much all of the panels that can fall off the car. I think we've got the boot. Everything else that can fall off it has gone at this point. And then you can see the panels all rolling not quite so gracefully down the hill, as is the car now. Yeah, very, very big accident caused by, again, you're just talking a few millimetres out of position across some of the fast sections. This one was a peculiar one. The Verlierer is not a particularly oversteery car. I'm not entirely sure quite how I got it so unhappy. I think it was either some rocks or perhaps the bush that upset it a little bit, and then trying to correct it, trying to carry it or still keep some speed up, caused it to get a big oversteery moment. Yeah, it's not an oversteery car. It's not something you tend to have to worry about in this vehicle. Just that time out was a little bit unlucky. Again, it took a few attempts. On the whole, though, this was a pretty good vehicle to drive. I mean, you see how I got that jump a little fraction wrong in this car. Is a little bit wonky on takeoff. I had to fight the car back to get it all back under control again. If I'd done that in the sports car at the start of this, you would have been off the course. There's not a hope in hell you'd keep it under control. But this had the handling really to deal with those kind of bumps. And it was good enough through through these tight and twisty sections, despite being a big, large SUV, this one. It was still very, very good through the corners. It handled a lot better than I was expecting. You could put power down through here. You never had any fear of the back end stepping out across those bumps like you did with the Verlierer. It was absolutely okay. Across them corners again, landings of the jumps this time, making sure not to run out wide and play in the horrible bumpy bushes over that side. This time no issues with the car going sideways again. Landings of the jumps were no problem when you got things slowed down enough, and then we launch it down this little side road, making sure to not clip the mountainside on the inside too much. A little bit throwing in the air, as most cars will be around that second to last corner, but still could manage to maintain good speed, and the Verlierer is across the line and gets stopped all under control nicely. And I may have completely and utterly not paid enough attention and seen the tree. So it survives its way down Chiliad across the finish line jump, and then I promptly bump it into a tree when going to turn it around. Yeah, a very solid SUV, this one. Driving it down Chiliad, it's a pretty damn quick car. Okay, the brakes aren't as good as sports cars, but it does do a pretty good job of getting stopped. To the table, the Verlierer goes into 12th place, and that is a quick time. A 1:22.5 puts it ahead of the Lamborghini Diablo. It's 0.3 of a second down on the Cheetah, although it is second down on the Brawler. Those Brawler insurgent times are really very, very quick. Yeah, I like the Verlierer. It's a nice car to drive. It just cannot deal with the bumps. It cannot deal with the bumps bumps as well as the Cheetah or the Pagani Huayra or even the Diablo for that matter. While it is a fraction quicker, Diablo was better across the bumps. The Cognoscenti and the Buller set identical times. A 1:27.7 for both of them in 31st and 32nd place. Yeah, I was very surprised by that. They are a fraction slower than the Felon All Track, a fraction slower than the Dubster, a little bit slower than the Blackfin. They do beat the Insignia, the Maserati, quicker than the Guardian as well, which is not bad going. They're both pretty good cars. They're both both these decent times down here. They're both good handling cars. Between the pair of them, I don't know which one I would pick. In all honesty, they both have their own little flaws going down this course, but yeah, they do a decent job of being nice and controllable. Anyway, that is it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.